Hello and welcome to Medicated Housewife DIY, where crafting and mental health come together. I'm doing something a little bit different this week. I just want to take a couple of moments to talk about stress, anxiety, and maybe a pinch of depression in there. I don't know about you guys, but come holiday time, like right now, there are so many festive celebrations and social commitments and entertaining responsibilities. Sometimes it's just a little overwhelming and you have to take back your time, reclaim some time, if you will, for yourself. Time to take some deep breaths and maybe take a night off and relax a bit. Now that can mean different things to different people. For some, it's like putting your feet up and binge watching some Netflix. For others, it's a cocktail, a glass of wine, a cup of coffee, a cup of tea with friends or a partner, or even yourself. But not the cocktail by yourself thing, because drinking alone is probably not your best bet. For others, it's taking time to be creative, paint a picture, make something out of clay, any of these things. If they relieve stress for you, then that's what you should be doing. Crafting is an amazing stress reliever, if for no other reason, because it's a constructive distraction. A healthy distraction. Which brings me to today's crafts. I have got some relatively easy, budget-friendly, beautiful holiday crafts for you guys. Because to be honest, I needed a little bit of crafting therapy just to give myself that break. So here's a couple of upscale Christmas decor pieces that will not stress you out. And please note that I am just a crafter that takes mental health seriously. I am not a medical professional and I am not offering medical advice. If you feel that you need more help than just a crafting therapy session, then I encourage you to seek out help with a qualified professional always. Remember that you are the only you that you've got. And I'm willing to bet that you are not the only person that depends on you and needs you. So always make time to take care of you, my DIY loving friend. Now, what are we waiting for? Let's go DIY together. For this DIY, I'm starting with 20 wood rings, and you can get these at Dollar Tree, not my Dollar Tree, but maybe yours. But I'll link some in the description box below as well. I am painting all 20 rings with a mixture of water and some folk art antique wax, which I will link for you below. I paint the rings all over, and I'm using a dry paper towel just to wipe off the excess liquid. I've got this large foam cone wrapped in parchment paper to keep my wood rings from sticking to it, and I'm using the cone as a shape template to wrap my rings around it into that cone shape. I use some hot glue to attach the wood rings to one another, but not to the actual cone. And the first row has 6 rings in it, and it is a little awkward to keep the rings together at the very beginning, but once we get through that first row and that's done, it's going to become easier to hold them together. And unfortunately, my camera did die as I was filming this very first row, and I had no idea, so you don't get to see me finishing that first row. I'm sorry about that. So once that first row of 6 rings is finished, I move on to the second row, which has 5 rings in it. So now I'm going to be attaching the 5 rings to each other around that cone, as well as to the rings that are underneath them in row 1, as you can see me doing right here. And when I get to the last ring, which is the 5th ring in this row, I've got a little too much space on each side of it. So I will squeeze those rings a little tighter than the foam cone to make them fit together better, because ultimately we are removing that foam cone at the end. So I can force those rings to be a little closer together, if that makes sense. Hopefully I'm explaining that clearly to you. And moving on to the 3rd row, which has 4 rings, we are still going to be faced with the problem of having a little too much space when we attach that 4th and final ring. So again, we're going to end up squeezing those rings together to make sure that all 4 of those rings are going to touch each other. The 4th row has 3 rings in it, and after attaching the first ring of the 3, I just basically removed the cone from under the rings altogether to make adding the rest of the 3 rings just a little bit easier for myself, just so that when I place and glue them in place, I have more leeway to fit them wherever it is that they'll fit. The cone already did its job by helping the rings form this cone or tree-like shape that we're looking for. The final row is only 2 rings, and I attach those 2 rings to each other at the top of the rings first before gluing that 2-ring piece to the top of my tree. I want to cover up the hot glue that attaches the rings together, so I got this roll of flat faux leather from Amazon. I'll link it for you below, but you can cut strips of the Dollar Tree faux leather for this, or if you're lucky enough to find that elusive faux leather ribbon at your Dollar Tree, because Lord knows I cannot find it at mine, then you can use that instead. This roll of faux leather is 1 inch wide, and I needed it to be less wide. So I folded the pieces that I cut in half the long way and just cut them up the middle so that each piece became 2 pieces. I'm using hot glue to wrap the strips of leather around the rings where they are attached side by side, as you can see me doing right here. I ended up only wrapping the rings attached next to each other and not the rows that are attached to other rows, because I was afraid if I wrapped everywhere that was glued together, the tree would look like a crazy mess of multi-directional wrapped leather. So I just wrapped the rings where they were attached next to each other. And that's not nearly as complicated as that just sounded. You can see what I'm doing right here by watching. I wrap the 2 rings at the very top of the tree with the leather where they meet each other at the top. I needed a topper for my tree, so I grabbed one of these wood snowflakes, which you can find similar ones at Dollar Tree, and I attached it to another unpainted wood ring, then simply glued that topper to the very top of my tree. Now, even though I didn't want to wrap the rings in between rows with leather, I still wanted to camouflage all that hot glue. So I cut a piece of this leafy ribbon, which I will link for you below, but you could also use any of those thinner ribbons that you can get at Dollar Tree to do this too. I just loosely wrapped the ribbon to cover in between the rows of rings, hiding that glue. Then I secured the bottom and the top of the wrapped ribbon with a little bit of hot glue. I also really liked the little bit of greenery color that this leafy ribbon added to the piece. And this is my wood ring and leather Christmas tree, and you guys know this is right up my alley. I love this tree. I love everything about it. Not sure if it would be considered rustic, maybe even a little boho, I'm not sure, but the wood, the leather, the leaves, it's high-end looking and very stylish. This next DIY begins with this small wood slice from Dollar Tree and this wood dowel, also from Dollar Tree, that I cut down to about 8 inches long. I got a pack of these small 1-inch wood circles from Amazon, and I'll link them for you below. I grabbed one, and I'm going to use hot glue to attach one side of my dowel to the middle of that small circle, trying to hold it as straight as I can and as close to the middle of the circle as I can. Then I added more glue around the edge of the dowel to secure it in place. Using some Gorilla Glue super glue, which I will link for you below, but you can also use the Dollar Tree super glue for this too. I'm going to attach the other side of the dowel to the middle of this wood slice, which is going to be my tree base, and oh, that glue just went splat right out of the tube and left an unsightly stain in the middle of the wood slice, but that's okay, we'll cover it up later. Then I attached the dowel to the large glob of super glue. I grabbed this floral wire from Dollar Tree and cut 10 12-inch long pieces. I make a loop at the end of the wire, and I'm going to begin beading the wire. I'm using 2 sizes of wood beads, a medium size and a small size, and you can get the wood beads at Dollar Tree, but I will link the ones that I'm using below for you. The pattern for the beaded wire is as follows. We bead 13 small beads, followed by 1 big bead, followed by 2 small beads, then another big bead, then 1 small bead, followed by a big bead, and another small bead, followed by 2 big beads. And then we loop the other side of the wire to complete the strand. You can always pause the video to get the exact pattern to recreate, or you could make up your own pattern. Then I close up the other end of the beaded strand by looping and twisting the wire. I am going to repeat this exact process for 10 more beaded strands in the exact same pattern as this one. Now I have my 10 beaded strands that are exactly the same, and I take the loops at the end of the wire that has the 13 small beads at that side, and I bend that wire over the first bead so that the beads are packed tightly onto that wire. I take a hot glue gun and I fill the bead hole on the last bead with glue so that that bead will stay in place, and also it holds the rest of the beads in place. And again, I'm going to do this exact same thing with the ends of all 10 of my bead strands. To get rid of that ugly super glue stain, I take a piece of jute twine from Dollar Tree and wrap it around the base of the wood dowel, just enough until the stain can no longer be seen. I'm going to take my 10 bead strands and hang them from the tiny wood circle at the top of my tree. And to do this, I use some hot glue to attach the wire from the small beaded side at the top. And I use enough glue and push that wire down long enough and strong enough until that beaded strand will stay in place. At the bottom of the beaded strand is where the 2 large beads are. I use a dab of hot glue on the edge of that wood slice and then stick the large bead down flat onto the wood slice. I take the next beaded strand and attach it in the exact same way directly across from the first beaded strand, which gives me 2 sections of free space on either side. I take my remaining 8 strands of beads and I'm going to space out and attach 4 strands of beads on each side of the tree. I did not measure this. I just eyeballed it. It's not that big a deal. And I spaced them out as best that I could. And I do the same thing with all of the beaded strands. I attach the top first, and then at the bottom, with that bottom bead, I attach it to the edge of the wood slice, gluing it flat down. I take a couple of minutes to shape the wire beaded strands so that they all have the same tree type shape, which actually resembles a jug or something like that. It's just narrow at the top where the small beads are and then ballooning out as you get toward the bottom where the larger beads are. To cover up the hideous mess of hot glue and floral wire at the top, I grab a second tiny wood circle and just glue it right on top of all those wires. I cut a small piece of this extra thick jute I got on Amazon, but you can use the Dollar Tree nautical rope for this too. I wrap the jute around and in between the 2 wood circles like a sandwich cookie to hide the wires coming out of the beads. I had this jumbo wood bead I got on Amazon, and I'll link it for you below, and I hot glued the bead on top of the wood circle. I had this wood star from a previous project and I hot glued the back to a piece of a bamboo skewer. Then I added some hot glue inside the hole of the jumbo bead and stuck the bamboo skewer down into the hole to be the topper for my tree. And this is my wood beaded Christmas tree, and I do in fact love this tree. But the main reason I love it is because I literally had no plan for this tree. I just started and waited to see what direction the project took, and it happened to be a real winner in my opinion. It's a high quality wood look, and it's also a piece of decor that will work way beyond the holiday season. This next DIY is ridiculously easy. I had these 2 cardboard small cones, but you can make your own cones out of poster board to do this too. And I have a scary amount of these Mardi Gras beads from Dollar Tree, and I'm gonna go cut the necklaces and begin hot gluing the Mardi Gras beads wrapped around both of the cones, starting from the bottom and then working my way up to the top of the cones on both. Once both cones are covered with beads, I take them both outside and spray paint them both with some Rust-Oleum paint and primer in matte white, which I will link for you below. Once dry, I take one of the cones and using some Faux Gras antique wax and a chip brush, I roughly distress paint the white beads, really trying to just rough them up and age them. And when I'm finished with that off camera, I glued a small wood star I had from a previous project to the top as a tree topper. For the second cone, all I did was spray paint over the white with some Rust-Oleum metallic copper paint. And these are my Mardi Gras spray painted Christmas trees. Not the most inspired DIY I've ever had, but simple and very useful to fill out your holiday table, centerpiece, or tiered tray, a practical but pretty and easily customizable DIY. And you know what I'm going to say? I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments which one of these Dollar Tree Christmas decor trees was your favorite and why. I love hearing from all of you. And if you've enjoyed this DIY video, there's another one waiting for you. Just click that link on your screen for more Medicated Housewife DIYs. Also, I'd love for you to join our little crafting family and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and until next time, my name is Sarah. I'm the Medicated Housewife, and crafting is my medication.